From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Emeka Omolu. Welcome. We start with the hurricane warning that's been issued to millions of people on the east coast of the United States. Weather experts say hurricane force winds will hit coastal areas in North and South Carolina in a few days. Residents are bracing themselves for massive flooding. Over 1 million people have been evacuated so far. A state of emergency has also been declared in Virginia and Maryland ahead of Florence's arrival. Residents in the Carolinas are boarding up their homes and stocking up on food, water and other essentials. Grocery shelves are empty and hardware stores are cramped with customers. Many gas stations are running low on fuel.
We're all very uncertain, but we're preparing. We're trying to help businesses get prepared. That's what we've been doing today. We're going to be working all day tomorrow up until the curfew to try to get everybody squared away, and hopefully we can all of Wilmington can stick together and let's fight this thing together. Everybody look out for everybody. That's what it's all about.
President Donald Trump is promising to provide any amount of money necessary to repair damage caused by the storm, but he has taken some flack for calling his administration's response to Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico a success. The Trump administration put the death toll at under 50. It's since been raised to nearly 3,000 after multiple studies found there were hundreds of casualties after the hurricane from a lack of power and access to health care.
Well, I think Puerto Rico was incredibly successful. Puerto Rico was actually our toughest one of all because it's an island, so you can't truck things onto it. Everything's by boat. We moved a hospital into Puerto Rico, a tremendous military hospital in the form of a ship, you know that. And I actually think, and the governor's been very nice, and if you ask the governor, he'll tell you what a great job. I think probably the hardest one we had by far was Puerto Rico because of the island nature. And I actually think it was one of the best jobs that's ever been done with respect to what this is all about.
The Caribbean is faring slightly better as Tropical Storm Isaac continues to weaken. The center of the storm is just east of Martinique. It's forecast to move across the Lesser Antilles into the eastern Caribbean Sea on Thursday. A tropical storm warning is in effect for Martinique, Guadeloupe and Dominica. Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit called on citizens to take advisories seriously and to keep monitoring the developments.
We all have vividly in our memories what happened to us in respect to Hurricane Maria and the speed at which it moved from a Category 3 to a Category 5, which was the quickest in history, 36 minutes. And we all suffered at the hands of Hurricane Maria. So as far as the National Emergency Planning Organization is concerned, we are taking no chances. And we're leaving no stone unturned in respect to the preparation of the state, the country, and its citizens.
Brazil's jailed former president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is asking voters to choose Fernando Haddad in next month's presidential election. Leaders of the Workers' Party have decided unanimously to name Haddad as their candidate. Lula's final appeals to be allowed to stand were blocked by the Supreme Court at the weekend. Lula sent a letter from prison pledging his innocence and formally endorsing Haddad as his substitute.
Há mais de 5 meses estou preso injustamente.
I have been unjustly in prison for more than 5 months. I didn't commit any crime, and I was condemned by the press well before being tried. I continue to challenge the car wash prosecutors and Judge Sergio Moro and the Federal Regional Court of the 4th Region to show a single piece of evidence against me. That is why, from my heart, I want to ask all who will vote for me to vote for our friend Fernando Haddad for President of the Republic.
Not accept a Brazil of the 19th or 18th century. We don't want an unequal Brazil. We will work together to build a new country. We are together here to fulfill this task, and we don't have any problems. We have the will to give back to Brazil. We count with each and every one of you. We will go to the streets, and on the 28th, we will celebrate Brazil's democracy. Long live democracy, Lula libre, and long live Brazil.
Andre Vieira was in Curitiba for the announcement and has more in this report.
This year, September 11, is a historic day for the left in Brazil. After the courts prohibited Lula's candidacy, the Workers' Party has declared Fernando Haddad as its candidate for the national elections on October 7. So, Fernando Haddad and Manuela Dávila as vice president are the new candidates for the Workers' Party. They will bring Lula's vision to the people. Also, the Workers' Party continues its appeals through the courts in order to overturn Lula's conviction to set him free as soon as possible. The party states that Lula is innocent and that he is suffering a political, media and judicial witch hunt.
Andre Vieira there. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza says the system of counting the number of migrants leaving Venezuela is flawed. He's worried that the numbers are inflated.
A Venezuelan citizen who leaves from Cucuta, accesses Ecuador, then goes to Chile, and after that to Argentina, is counted 4 times. Of course, that way there are 2 million people. If there is a migration that hasn't existed before, how many are there? 500,000? 600,000? Yes, they exist. We are worried and we want to assist them.
Venezuelan migrants, meanwhile, in Argentina are waiting at their embassy for the flight that will take them back home. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, spoke with one of the migrants about their decision to return.
I feel happy to be returning home. We needed this. 2 of my children live here in Argentina. They have established themselves here, but I have more children back home and I need to go back. We were treated well in Argentina. It was not an issue for us. But the situation here is getting worse every day. So we feel it's better to just go back home.
And Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has met with the governor of the China Development Bank. They discussed projects paid for by joint Venezuelan and Chinese funds.
Economic globalization and global governance are being attacked. Nonetheless, China and Venezuela have maintained mutual trust, with the Venezuelan government supporting China in topics of great importance to us, like control of the Southern Sea. Meanwhile, China has supported Venezuela through a special arrangement when oil prices were low.
We recognize that Latin America must look to itself, but it must also foster wider relationships so we may go beyond being seen as the United States' backyard. We need relationships based on the respect of international rights. China agrees with this instance, with fostering cooperation against hegemony.
And she added that Venezuela is optimistic about cooperating with China.
This meeting was aimed at expanding cooperation, reinforcing projects, and planning new ones, according to the instructions President Maduro gave us. So this is a way for the Venezuelan people to reach welfare. Cooperation with China will benefit both peoples.
Time for one of our short breaks. Join us in about a minute.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. A group of Colombian senators have visited former FARC combatants who are working to re-enter society. Despite their efforts, though, the former combatants have not received much of what was promised by the government.
Pablo Catatumbo, member of the Peace Commission, stated that the visit to Mira Vale revealed the lack of actions by the government despite the support received from the UN and countries like Norway.
The state can't pass the responsibility to other nations. It is the government's responsibility to apply what they promise.
The senator of the FARC party said that the lands agreed upon in the peace treaties must not serve as confinement spaces and asked for an end to the lies about alleged disagreements between FARC high officials.
Ivan hasn't quit the party nor the peace process. In fact, his letter was another sign of his compromise. These are just lies being spread by enemies of the peace process.
Other senators stated that the former combatants are committed to this project and highlighted the progress that has already been made.
This project is working, despite the government's lack of action towards peace. The productive projects developed here are really important for the whole region.
Senator Ivan Cepeda said that the state abandonment is just one of the main concerns for former FARC combatants and communities.
The state has not fulfilled its promises of social and economic reincorporation, of solving the judicial limbo of former combatants who are very worried about how they will be treated by the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, and also feel insecure in the area after witnessing military operations there.
The Peace Commission will present a report to Congress regarding guarantees and security for former combatants. They will ask the government to enforce the peace agreements and to include productive projects for former combatants in the general national budget.
The leader of Peru's Shining Path guerrilla movement, Abimael Guzman, has been sentenced to a second life term. The 83-year-old was found guilty of planning the 1992 bombing in Lima. The attack killed 25 people and wounded 155 others. An estimated 69,000 people were killed in the war between the Shining Path and the government between 1980 and 2000, many at the hands of the army. A new law in Peru would hand over national oil reserves to offshore corporations without considering environmental consequences.
President Vizcarra, along with Congress, have come to an agreement. Together, they intend to approve a new fossil fuel law, which is being criticized by several sectors for being too flexible regarding the preservation of the environment.
For example, in the case of sea exploitation, we have species that are unique in the world. We are fighting to create restricted areas to protect the ecosystem. This law will mean a disaster.
Congressman Manuel Damert, another critic of the project, points out that this law would allow infinite exploitation of current oil agreements.
They
can do whatever they want without government authorization, anything. The law will facilitate the handing over of state property as though it were private property, and it will be used until the oil is depleted. They can do whatever they want with the resources.
According to Damert, Peru would lose control of at least $35 billion worth of oil reserves in the Pacific and the Amazon regions, in addition to another $30 billion of natural gas resources. That money would go to private mining companies in Peru and Chile, rather than benefiting the Peruvian people.
The passing of the law will regress national development and diminish the possibility of having a basic internal industry with proper sustainable energy, managed by the Peruvian people for the Peruvian people.
Many of the companies that will benefit from the law are responsible for a series of oil leaks that have affected dozens of indigenous communities and natural resources. The Ombudsman Office has said that the law should be reconsidered.
Focus should not only be placed on promoting investment, but also implementing regulations that facilitate remediation of environment and compensation of damages in the affected communities.
Meanwhile, northern Amazon communities and traditional fishermen have announced protests to prevent the endorsement of this law in Congress.
Fishing communities in Ecuador are the latest to be negatively affected by the government's austerity measures. They say they are taking on an unfair share of the burden, while large corporations and multinationals stand to avoid paying penalties.
Ecuador's government has announced new diesel prices. The shrimp and fishing sector will see an increase in their diesel costs, in line with the government's austerity measures.
Diesel for the tuna and shrimp industry increased only 25 cents on its VAT. For other fishing industries, there will only be a 10 cents increase. Those numbers will remain the same for the next 2 years.
For some analysts, the measure doesn't make sense because not everyone uses diesel. If they had really wanted to save money, they should have revised gas prices.
There might be speculation, and that is what the fish and shrimp industries are worried about. That will make them lose competitiveness. Those are exporting sector in Ecuador, as a dollarized economy, must support them. I don't understand why these subsidies are focused on the sectors that bring dollars to the country.
The government said they have spoken with the fishing sectors. However, local fishing sectors say this measure just benefits big industries and doesn't respect their work.
We haven't been part of any agreement to exchange an increase in gas prices for an extension of artisanal waters of over 800 nautical miles for industrial ships to sail without problem. I make this call because they are only bringing poverty to the fishing communities and artisanal fishing. They are allowing abuse against maritime resources.
In light of the recent economic measures implemented by President Lenin Moreno, several social and political sectors are calling for a demonstration on September 13. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Quito, Ecuador.
A state of emergency has been declared in 2 of Honduras' southern provinces due to drought. Families are going hungry because of the severe conditions and its effects on their farms. Those living in hard-hit areas have not been able to feed themselves, so they require emergency food. Roughly 82% of corn and bean crops have been lost. Unions in Argentina are gearing up for massive protests because of the ongoing financial crisis. Sabrina Roth explains.
On Wednesday, state workers are set to hold a national strike that will include mobilizations, roadblocks and countrywide gatherings to demand an end to the austerity policies established by President Mauricio Macri, which have worsened thanks to the deal the government made with the IMF. Unions announced they will march to the Treasury to demand an increase in wages to match protected inflation rates. Part of these projects is also calling attention to the issues of sovereignty, land exploitation and working conditions that several mines and nuclear power plants pose across the country. Issues that have only worsened during Macri's administration.
Sabrina Roth reporting there. The most vulnerable people in Argentina have invented a new way of protesting. They have set up soup kitchens on streets.
Soup kitchens have been installed in Argentina's street to showcase in what condition the most vulnerable sectors are living in, and also to demand respect for workers' union rights.
We need to discuss about resource distribution for the people most affected by the economic adjustment plan. We need to improve employment rates, tariffs, and food policies. Do everything to urgently solve the problems of people, especially children.
Macri's zero poverty plan never materialized. Rather, there has been an increase in poverty, unemployment, and rise in prices of basic products.
We must continue to fight, because this government still doesn't care about us. It just makes false promises saying we are on the right path. If they have to live just for a week in these neighborhoods, they'll notice that we are not fine. People are starving in our country. Leaving people in hunger is a crime. These are the consequences of this criminal government's economic model.
According to the Social Distress Observatory of the Catholic University of Argentina, the death has not only increased poverty and affected people psychologically, but it has also affected human development and social integration.
This will at least feed some people, but the truth is that every day we can only provide lunch but not dinner. I have to take care of 5 children. How am I supposed to do that? My salary is not enough. I earn 4,000 pesos and a bit of extra money from here and there, but that's not enough for my whole family.
People have chosen to protest like this in the streets so that the government can see it and think about those living in difficult conditions. They will keep fighting for their social rights and better economic condition to overcome the growing poverty.
Barbados is taking steps to strike down a law that automatically gives the death penalty to anyone convicted of murder. Debate in Parliament comes after the Caribbean Court of Justice ruled it was unconstitutional to do so. However, lawmakers are clear the death penalty will remain. Now the debate surrounds exactly who will sentence convicted murderers.
To consider whether the responsibility, the heavy and final responsibility of passing a sentence of death should fall on one person, whether it should fall alone on the shoulders of a judge, or whether, as in some jurisdictions in the United States, that grave and weighty decision should be made by a panel of 12 persons, and whether that panel of 12 persons will be allowed only to pass that sentence of death if they are unanimous.
Trinidad and Tobago could finally be adopting the Caribbean Court of Justice as its final court of appeal. Even though the CCJ's headquarters is based in Trinidad, the country has long avoided even debating its adoption. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says that will change next year.
A motion is going to go to the Parliament at the appropriate time in 2019, asking the parliamentarians who are the people's representatives to vote in support of the Caribbean Court of Justice as our final court of appeal.
Time for a short break. Join us in a few moments.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The Philippines is bracing for a Category 5 typhoon to hit the northern part of the country. Typhoon Mango is expected to bring heavy rains, flooding and winds of up to 205 kilometers per hour. Officials say relief goods and disaster equipment are already available in most towns. People in Northern Ireland have protested against an upcoming football match with Israel. Here's more on that and a look at some other stories from around the world.
Pro-Palestinian protesters in Northern Ireland are demanding a football match against Israel be called off. The match is scheduled to take place in Belfast Windsor Park. Demonstrators gathered on Tuesday in solidarity with the Palestinians who are subjected to ongoing violence and occupation by Israel. The boycotts, divestments and sanctions movement and Sinn Féin were among those protesting. So far, 5,000 people have signed a petition against the game. President Vladimir Putin announced investments worth 200 billion rubles with China at this year's Eastern Economic Forum. He also revealed that making electronic visas more widely accessible to the region is definitely a possibility. The forum has been taking place annually since 2015 to develop political and economic ties between Russia and the Asia-Pacific. This year, President Xi Jinping of China was invited as one of the headline guests.
Our decision on electronic visas to the Far East is in the spirit of development and openness. Right now, they are available for citizens of 18 countries who can file all papers remotely in a simplified procedure. We will continue working to see the number of countries whose citizens can receive electronic visas grow, including APEC countries.
The number of casualties in a suicide bombing in Afghanistan on Tuesday soared to 165 overnight. Local hospitals struggled to cope. A suicide bomber self-detonated in a crowd of people who were protesting against the police in Nangarhar province. Hundreds have been killed in a series of bombings lately.
A young Ghanaian artist has honoured the late Kofi Annan through a series of portraits. Derek Barr first spray-painted Annan at a graffiti arts festival in Accra. After Annan's death, he felt compelled to send a message to young people. Barr feels that the life of the former United Nations chief is one to look up to. And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And of course, don't forget to join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Emika Omolu, and thank you for watching.